Michael DiPietro is coming off the best season of his pro career and is drawing attention as a potential UFA. The Bruins have a decision to make, and fast. The reality is they cannot just let him walk for nothing.
You're Locked On Bruins, your daily podcast on the Boston Bruins, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
What is up, Bruins fans, and welcome back to the Locked On Boston Bruins podcast. I'm your host, Ian McLaren, and this is a daily show where we discuss all things Spoke to Be. Today is Thursday, 12th. Thank you so much for making Locked On Bruins your first listen every day. It's part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. And today we are discussing the Michael DiPietro situation. It was reported yesterday by Kevin Weeks that the 26-year-old is drawing a lot of attention as a potential unrestricted free agent. We're going to talk about who he is, why teams are interested, the Bruins ending picture and organizational pressure, and also some options for the Bruins, and finally, my take on everything. Before we get into all that, a quick reminder, you can find the podcast on social media, Locked NHL Bruins. You can find me, my hockey thoughts and dad jokes at Ian C. McLaren. I am a lifelong Boston Bruins fan, and I've been covering this team and the NHL for about 20 years now. So on Wednesday, hockey analyst and former NHL goaltender Kevin Weeks posted on X that our boy Michael DiPietro is drawing a lot of interest on the open market as a potential unrestricted free agent. And he wrote specifically, All-Star G DiPietro has opened plenty of eyes and is seen as the top available among Group 6 free agents. Plenty of NHL clubs I've spoken with have expressed their interest in him. #HockeyX. And he's drawing interest for very good reason. He was exceptional for the Providence Bruins this past season. Let's go back a little bit, though. He was drafted 64th overall, third round by the Vancouver Canucks in 2017. And he was a star junior goalie for the Windsor Spitfires in the OHL. In 2017, he won a Memorial Cup and earned the Hap Ems Memorial Trophy as top goaltender. The year after, he was a goalie of the year in the OHL and posted career OHL stats of a .232 goals against average, 2.32, with a .918 save percentage over 174 games. He was a very highly touted goalie coming out of junior, and he even played for Team Canada at the World Juniors, in a starting role. Now, he again was drafted by the Canucks and didn't quite get the opportunity there that he had hoped for, and therefore had made a request to be moved at some point so that he could kind of move up in terms of the depth chart on another club. And therefore, a couple of years ago, he was traded to Boston in the Jack Studnicka deal. And he was initially viewed as an AHL depth option behind Brandon Bussi, who was a also highly touted goaltender for the Boston Bruins in their AHL affiliate. Just going back to the World Juniors, in 4 games in the 2019 World Junior Championship, DiPietro went 2-2, but with a .951 save percentage and a 1.23 goals against average. So exceptional numbers there at the international level. This came after being cut from the team in 2018. This was the 2019 tournament. Canada, unfortunately, was bounced in the quarters that year by Finland in a 2-1 overtime game. But he was fantastic in that tournament. He also appeared for Canada at the 2021 World Championships and was on the gold medal roster that year as well. All this came before his time with the Bruins. And this past season, he was an AHL All-Star and winner of the Baz Bastian Award as the AHL's best goaltender. 25-10 and 5 record with a 2.05 goals against average, a 927 save percentage with 5 shutouts. And he is being eyed as a potential free agent signing by multiple teams as he hits Group 6 free agent status. And that means that a player who meets specific criteria allows them to become an unrestricted free agent, meaning they can sign with any team without their previous team having the right to match an offer. You have to be 25 years or older, which he is. It's 26. Player must have completed 3 or more pro seasons, which he has. He's played for the Abbotsford Canucks and the Providence Bruins and the Utica Comets dating back to 2019-20. You also have to have played less than 28 NHL games as a goalie. So he meets that criteria and therefore can become an unrestricted free agent as of July 1st. And again, Kevin Weeks saying DiPietro opened a lot of eyes this past season. He will command a lot of attention. He was pretty good for the Providence Bruins even last year with a record of 18-9-2, a 2.51 goals against average, and a 918 save percentage. Now, don't forget, Brendan Bussey was supposed to be the guy that was going to rise up and perhaps challenge for the backup role after Linus Ullmark was traded. The Bruins, of course, acquired Joonas Korpisalo, keeping both Bussey and DiPietro in the AHL. Bussey is also an unrestricted free agent. So the Bruins risk losing both of their AHL goalies here, and both are seemingly capable of at least challenging for the backup role with the Boston Bruins or with another NHL team. So there are some options here, and that brings us to, again, the Bruins goaltending picture and what is at stake here as free agency looms. And we'll discuss that here as the podcast continues. If you are looking for a snack that is both delicious and nutritious, you need to crack into a good source of protein with Wonderful Pistachios. Wonderful Pistachios is one of the highest protein nuts, and each 1 ounce serving has 6 grams of protein, giving you over 10% of your daily value. Plus, they're packed with fiber and better for you unsaturated fats to help keep you feeling fuller longer. Personally, I love the no shells variety. It's the perfect grab-and-go snack for busy days. Whether I'm snacking at my desk, on a road trip, or just need a quick protein boost, they're always my go-to. We also sneak them to our kids when they're playing video games so that we can give them a healthy snack. They don't even realize how good it is for them. If you love cracking open every shell for that satisfying crunch, the in-shell options are also a classic favorite. Get snacking, get cracking with the snack that packs a protein punch. Visit wonderfulpistachios.com to learn more. Thank you so much once again for making Locked On Bruins part of your daily routine. Available on your favorite podcast app and on YouTube. All you have to do is hit that subscribe button and each new episode will be automatically added to your feeds. And today we're discussing the Michael DiPietro conundrum, a very talented goalie who is seemingly hitting his stride, and the Bruins really can't afford to just let him walk for nothing, even if he remains buried in the organization behind Jeremy Swayman and Linus Ullmark for the time being, at least. And of course, Jeremy Swayman signed a long-term deal last year, a down season, but he remains the undisputed number one going forward. And there's a lot of belief that Marco Sturm, with a renewed focus on defensive structure and pushing the puck up the ice, will indeed help Jeremy Swayman's game. So he's locked in as the number one, no question. It gets a bit trickier after that. Linus Ullmark has 3 years left at a $3 million AAV, and that was with him being acquired from the Ottawa Senators last summer and Ottawa retaining 25% of that deal. That was with Linus Ullmark going to Ottawa in exchange for the 25th overall pick, which ended up being Dean Letourneau, Mark Kastelic, who has since been re-signed and will kind of fill that Trent Frederick hole that was left when he was traded to the Edmonton Oilers. And Korpisalo. He had some moments last season, but he's been relatively inconsistent over the past 2 seasons. Looked pretty good at times for the Bruins, and there was an argument perhaps for him to play more with Jeremy Swayman struggling, but he could indeed be shopped to free up some cap space or to open up a backup spot. Now, in terms of shopping Linus Ullmark, that might be a bit of a tough sell. And you very well may have to offer a bit of a sweetener in order to make it happen. Say, for example, Boston trades Linus Ullmark and a third, 4th round pick or a B-level prospect to a team like Arizona or Chicago. The Bruins could open up $3 million in cap space. The rebuilding team can use Ullmark as a stopgap starter or flip him later, and the Bruins could get a minor league player or future considerations in return. You could perhaps use Ullmark, trade him for a middle 6 forward or bottom pair defenseman on a similar cap hit. Could help both teams fill a roster gap while balancing money. If the Bruins want to reallocate cap from a goalie to forwards, this could potentially work short term. Another option would be trading for a veteran goalie on an expiring contract or a shorter term deal. But that wouldn't necessarily, resolve the issue of giving DiPietro an opportunity to play at the NHL level. The Bruins could get a stable option, and the receiving team would buy low on a goalie they can flip later or use while rebuilding. But either way, it's going to be a bit of a tough sell. Ullmark doesn't have any no-trade protection, so Boston does have full flexibility. And maybe late June into mid-July, there'll be some movement on the goalie market, or maybe you make him part of a larger multiplayer trade or a draft weekend maneuver. These are all potential options for Linus Ullmark, but it could be a bit of a tough move because he does have 3 years remaining on his contract. The acquiring team would be taking on $3 million per season over the next 3 years. And maybe the Bruins have to offer a sweetener or retain some salary on their own in order to free that up. Now, DiPietro is an unrestricted free agent, as is Brandon Bussi. He was used more than DiPietro in NHL call-ups, but it's very small sample size for both. question marks with both guys, but also some upside. Do you let one of them walk and bank on another? Do you trade? We'll discuss some of the options coming up, but that is the situation. You have Swayman, Korpisalo, and then DiPietro and Bussy, both as proven AHL performers, pending unrestricted free agents, and a decision to make on both. Now, the Bruins did recently sign Simon Zazacek, or Zazacek, to a 1-year entry-level deal. He's a 20-year-old Czech goalie who posted strong numbers in the Swedish J20 League. Bit of a development project, not a contender for the NHL or maybe even the AHL starting role yet, but if one of these guys is promoted to the NHL or only one is retained, then you would have, say, Bussy, Zajac as the AHL tandem with Swayman, DiPietro, Korpisalo. Now, another option, well, we'll discuss the options here in a moment. Let's not get ahead of ourselves. If both Bussy and DiPietro leave, the Bruins would be pretty thin behind Swayman and Korpisalo. Zajac isn't ready for a major role yet. DiPietro remains Boston's best internal backup option. Say both those guys walk, then you would have to sign another goalie to play down at the AHL level. So what are the options here? Well, let's take a look at 4 or 5 of them, plus my take here as the podcast continues. We're keying in here on DiPietro specifically because he's been the one reported to have interest. I'm sure Bussy would have some interest as well, but DiPietro, the rating AHL goalie of the year, and seemingly primed for at least a backup role at the NHL level. So perhaps you re-sign DiPietro, offer a 2-way or 1-way deal depending on your plan for Korpisalo. Maybe it's 2-way in year 1 and then 1-way in years 2 and 3, giving you some time to figure things out. He would provide NHL capable depth and continuity for Providence and also be an immediate call up if there were injuries to Swayman or Korpisalo. That would be the ideal situation, I believe, is to retain his rights. You cannot just let him walk. You could trade his rights, though, explore a return from a team looking to sign him before July 1st. Even a late round pick or a prospect is better than nothing. And we know that prior to July 1st, teams can trade a player's rights to another team, and it gives the acquiring team negotiating rights until July 1st, when the player can become an unrestricted free agent. So just like Boston can sign him at any point before July 1st, the acquiring team could also get his rights and have that negotiating window before July 1st. And again, getting anything in return is better than letting him walk for nothing, which is another option. Just let him walk. You potentially rely on Bussy if re-signed or bring in a different veteran backup. Zajac isn't NHL ready, and the depth certainly will take a hit. You'd also trade Joonas Korpisalo, make cap space, and create a clear backup path for Michael DiPietro. Could be challenging, but could open up long-term flexibility. Now, another option for Korpisalo is to simply place him on waivers and send him to the AHL while re-signing DiPietro and promoting him to backup. If he clears waivers, which he most likely would, his cap hit is mostly buried, and it's not necessarily ideal, but it creates room for DiPietro and protects NHL net depth while also freeing up a bit of cap space by burying Korpisalo in the AHL. And again, you could package him in a deal for a similarly priced forward or defenseman, effectively reallocating the cap, or trade him with or without a sweetener so that if DiPietro is re-signed, he's positioned to compete for the backup role. These are all options for what to do with Michael DiPietro and the goaltending situation here coming up in less than a month. This all has to be resolved by July 1st, or they risk him signing with another team and walking as a free agent for nothing. Where do I stand on all of this? Well, I do believe that DiPietro has earned a shot and should be re-signed as either Providence starter, with kind of being the next man up, or as NHL backup if you are indeed able to trade Joonas Korpisalo, or you want to just bury him in the NHL by placing him on waivers. If the Bruins can't trade him, they must consider waivers, or maybe even carrying 3 goalies temporarily. Letting DiPietro walk, especially without a strong succession plan and also with the possibility of losing Bussy, would just be pretty poor asset management. Look, Michael DiPietro has elevated his game to a new level, proving he's no longer just AHL depth. He's a legitimate NHL caliber goaltender. And after a dominant 2024-25 season in Providence, where he posted a .927 save percentage and earned goalie of the year honors, he can become an unrestricted free agent, and he's drawing widespread attention across the NHL, multiple teams expressing interest. The Bruins have helped develop him into a high-value asset, are suddenly faced with a critical choice: make room for him in their NHL plans, or risk losing him for nothing and watching him succeed in another city. Now, he is 26, not really a spring chicken, but not necessarily too young to hit as well as an NHL goaltender. Same with Brandon Bussy. For me, I've been higher on DiPietro. He was more highly touted in junior, seen as a pretty bankable prospect when he was drafted. And on paper, it sounds simple. Keep the breakout performer, but Boston's crease is anything but simple right now. Jeremy Swayman is the unquestioned number 1, set for long-term. Behind him, it's a bit chaotic. Korpisalo is under contract for 3 more years at a $3 million AAV, $1 million being absorbed by the Ottawa Senators. And while the Bruins could try to trade him, his inconsistent play and hefty cap hit make that challenging. Brandon Bussy, another pending UFA, hasn't separated himself as a clearly NHL-ready goaltender. And newly signed prospect Simon Zajac, though promising, is still a few years away at least from contributing at the NHL level. So that puts even more urgency on the DiPietro decision. Don Sweeney does have several options. Resign DiPietro to a 2-way or even 1-way deal, depending on what they do with Korpisalo. They could try to trade his rights before July 1, try to recoup a late pick or prospect, or worst case, they just let him walk and lose a goalie they have developed over the past few years at a time when their goaltending depth is pretty thin at best. The Korpisalo factor does loom large. He expressed discontent with his playing time this season. He and Swayman were not Swayman and Ullmark in terms of being best buds, brothers. If the Bruins can find a trade partner, maybe with a sweetener, a cap offset move, it could open the door for DiPietro to take over as backup. If not, Boston has to consider a more drastic move, like placing Korpisalo on waivers, burying part of his salary in the AHL. Far from ideal, but DiPietro has played well enough to justify the shakeup. He's younger, could potentially be around longer than Korpisalo. And while he may not have the opportunity to become an NHL starter, it could become at least a semi-unbalanced tandem situation, especially if Swayman doesn't recover his game. This isn't about contracts or call-ups. It's about setting the tone for the next phase of Bruins goaltending. Letting a breakout talent like DiPietro walk while holding onto an underperforming, overpaid veteran would send the wrong message about internal development and roster building. And how the Bruins handle this situation won't just impact next season. It could shape their makeup of the crease for years to come. I am pro re-sign Michael DiPietro, even at the expense of Korpisalo, if it means waiving him, whatever. Keep the younger guy, keep the guy with more upside, and signal to younger players that they do have an opportunity to advance here in the Boston Bruins organization. Let me know what you think. Hit me up in the YouTube comments. Hit me up on X, Blue Sky, Instagram. What would you do with Michael DiPietro? Resign? Say, have fun. Take your talents elsewhere. If they lose both DiPietro and Bussy, what are the options? It's going to be a very interesting few weeks for the Bruins with the draft and free agency, and it even goes down as far as third and fourth goaltenders on this team. It's going to be a very interesting decision ahead. Now, one guy that will not be available, who has long been rumored as a potential Bruin, is Chris Kreider. Larry Brooks of the New York Post reporting that he has signed off on a trade to Anaheim, and he will be joining Jacob Trouba as Rangers castoffs out there in California. So strike Kreider off the list. Maybe that puts Mika Zibanejad in play. Who knows? We'll see how things shake out here as the offseason continues. But Chris Kreider is going to be a Duck, not on Boston's wish list anymore. That's it for today's episode of Locked On Boston Bruins, my friends. Game 3 of the Stanley Cup Final goes tonight. Be sure to check out NHL Game Night. Every game, every night until a Stanley Cup champion is crowned. Locked On NHL Game Night provides local analysis on a national scale. You can find it on the Locked On NHL YouTube channel or wherever you listen to podcasts. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Please do take care of yourselves, take care of each other, and we'll talk to you again here on the next episode of Locked On Boston Bruins.